The first rays of dawn crept cautiously over the Nile, casting long shadows across the sprawling city of Thebes. The air was thick with the scent of warm sand, fragrant lotus blossoms, and the distant smoke of morning fires. Far from the bustling marketplaces and ornate temples, within the towering walls of Pharaoh's palace, a different world stirred to life, one of quiet footsteps, whispered prayers, and hidden stories. The servant awoke before the sun had fully risen, the rough linen sheets cool against their skin. Their small chamber, tucked away beneath the grand halls, was humble but functional, a simple cot, a wooden chest worn smooth by years of use, and a narrow window that framed the pink and gold horizon. This room, like the servant themselves, was a small cog in the vast machinery of the palace. But today it would mark the beginning of a journey none could have predicted. As the servant dressed in simple linen robes, their mind wandered to the task ahead. Today, they would enter the Pharaoh's household as a newly sworn servant, a role steeped in duty, tradition, and unspoken rules. The honor of serving Egypt's ruler was immense, but so too were the burdens. Every gesture, every word had to be precise. Every secret observed, every command obeyed without question. Descending the narrow stone stairs, the servant joined the river of palace life, a current of other servants, guards, priests, and officials flowing through vast corridors lined with towering columns and colorful frescoes depicting gods and kings of old. The scent of fresh bread mingled with the sharp tang of incense. The hum of voices, soft footfalls, and the clinking of bronze tools filled the air. This world was a complex dance of power and servitude, devotion and intrigue. The servant's first task was to deliver a sealed scroll to the Pharaoh's scribe, an honor rarely given to newcomers. Heart-pounding, they navigated the maze-like halls, careful to avoid the sharp eyes of palace overseers. Along the way, they glimpsed the grandeur of royal life, a golden throne draped in fine silks, courtiers adorned in elaborate jewelry, and priests chanting hymns in hushed temples. Upon reaching the scribe's chamber, the servant bowed deeply, presenting the scroll. The scribe, a stern man named Horus, examined the seal, the emblem of the royal falcon, and nodded approvingly. "Well done," he said quietly. "But remember, service here is more than duty. It is a test of loyalty, wisdom, and patience. Watch closely, learn quickly." As the day unfolded, the servant moved between chambers and courtyards, each step weaving them deeper into the palace's intricate web. They observed the preparation of the pharaoh's meals, the adornment rituals performed by royal attendants, and the quiet exchanges between nobles that hinted at alliances and rivalries. Yet amid the splendor, the servant saw the sharp contrasts: the weary faces of fellow servants bearing heavy loads, the secretive glances of guards on edge, and the subtle tensions that threaded through conversations like invisible threads. In the evening, the servant was summoned to the presence of Neshet, an elder servant whose knowledge of palace secrets was legendary. Neshet's eyes gleamed with both kindness and caution as he spoke. "The palace is not just stone and gold. It is a living thing, a kingdom within a kingdom. To serve well, you must understand its heartbeat, the loyalties, the fears, the unspoken dangers." Over the next weeks, the servant learned to move with discretion and grace. They studied the ancient laws etched into temple walls, listened to the priest's wisdom, and honed skills in observation and silence. They began to see the palace not only as a home of a ruler but as a fragile world balancing on the edge of chaos. One afternoon, while cleaning the chambers near the pharaoh's private audience hall, the servant overheard a whispered conversation that stirred their curiosity and fear. Two nobles spoke of changes to come and hidden threats, words laced with urgency and secrecy. Though the servant could not grasp the full meaning, they understood that the palace held secrets darker than any shadow cast by the setting sun. In moments stolen from duty, the servant found solace by the river bank. The Nile's calm waters reflected the endless sky, and the gentle lapping of waves whispered promises of hope and renewal. It was here the servant vowed to protect not just their own life, but the legacy of a kingdom that had stood for centuries. As the first moon rose over the city, the servant returned to the palace with a new resolve. Their journey had only just begun, but already they sensed the threads of fate weaving a tapestry of danger, loyalty, and destiny, one that would test their courage and reshape their world forever. The palace never truly slept. Even in the quiet hours after dusk, when most had retired to their chambers, the stone halls echoed faintly with footsteps, murmurs, and the soft rustling of silk. The servant had long since learned that these moments held the deepest secrets, whispers exchanged in shadowed corners, fleeting glances that spoke volumes, and footsteps that might lead either to safety or peril. That night, the servant lay awake on their modest cot, the dim glow of oil lamps casting flickering shadows across the walls. Their mind replayed the cryptic conversation overheard the day before. Changes to come, hidden threats. What could it mean? The palace, a fortress of power and tradition, was suddenly a place of uncertainty. And the servant, caught in the middle, felt the weight of unseen eyes watching their every move. The following morning, as the sun painted the sky in warm hues, the servant began their daily duties with renewed vigilance. The grand kitchens bustled with activity. Cooks hurried over boiling pots, bakers kneaded dough with practiced hands, and the aroma of fresh bread and spices filled the air. The servant moved silently, delivering trays and messages, but always alert to overhearing something, a whispered plan, a hint of treachery. Their chance came sooner than expected. While tidying the storeroom, the servant overheard two palace guards speaking in hushed tones near the wine casks. "The Pharaoh's life is no longer safe," one said, glancing around nervously. "The council divides. Some plot to replace him." The other nodded grimly. "We must find the traitors before it's too late." Fear and determination churned inside the servant's chest. Such words were dangerous, but also vital. They knew the palace's corridors like the back of their hand and resolved to gather more information, carefully, without drawing attention. Days turned into a tense game of observation. The servant watched the nobles' meetings behind closed doors, the secretive exchanges between courtiers, and the quiet but meaningful interactions among servants themselves. They noted who avoided whom, who lingered too long in certain chambers, and the odd tokens passed discreetly between hands. In the evenings, the servants sought counsel from Neshet. The elder servant listened carefully as the servant recounted what they had learned. "You walk a perilous path," Neshet warned. "Many seek power, and not all for the good of Egypt. But you must be cautious. Trust can be a weapon as sharp as any dagger." To aid in their efforts, Neshet introduced the servant to Neferu, a priestess with access to the temple's secret archives and hidden passages. Neferu's knowledge was vast, and her discretion absolute. Together, they planned to uncover the conspiracy that threatened the pharaoh and the kingdom. One evening, under the veil of darkness, the servant accompanied Neferu through narrow tunnels beneath the palace. The air was cool and damp, and the faint sound of water dripping echoed in the silence. The tunnels led to a concealed chamber where ancient scrolls and artifacts were stored, forgotten by most, but invaluable to those seeking truth. Neferu unfurled an old papyrus and pointed to cryptic symbols. "These writings speak of past betrayals and the fate of those who betrayed the crown," she said softly. "The shadows you sense are not new, but the dangers now are closer, more immediate." Armed with this knowledge, the servant felt both empowered and burdened. They now carried secrets that could save or doom the kingdom. But how to act without revealing themselves as a spy? How to distinguish friend from foe? Days passed with escalating tension. The servant's careful vigilance uncovered a secret meeting planned for the upcoming festival of Osiris, a gathering that might mark the beginning of a coup. The servant knew they had to warn Neshet and Neferu, but also to find proof. On the day of the festival, the palace was alive with color, music, and prayer. The streets thronged with people celebrating the god of the afterlife's journey, and even within the palace walls, there was a sense of reverence and anticipation. Yet beneath the surface, the servant felt the pulse of danger quicken. Disguised among the servants preparing offerings and decorations, the servant listened closely to conversations. Their heart raced when they caught snippets of coded phrases, signs of those involved in the plot. As night fell and the festival's sacred rituals began, the servants slipped away to the hidden chamber with Neferu and Neshet. Together, they pieced together the threads of conspiracy, names of nobles, plans for assassinations, and intended allies among the palace guards. The weight of responsibility settled heavily on the servants' shoulders. They were no longer just a bystander but a guardian of the pharaoh's life and the kingdom's future. The festival's final prayers echoed through the temple as the servant resolved to act. The shadows in the palace were long and dangerous, but with courage, loyalty, and the wisdom of allies they would face whatever dawn brought. The dawn's light had barely begun to seep through the high palace windows when the servant awoke with a restless mind. The revelations uncovered during the festival of Osiris still haunted their thoughts like restless phantoms, swirling amidst the soft, golden light filtering into the small chamber. The air carried a coolness unlike the usual desert warmth, as if the palace itself sensed the growing unrest beneath its stone walls. The servants' duties that morning were as usual, preparing the pharaoh's chamber, assisting with the morning ablutions, and delivering messages. Yet each step felt heavier, burdened by the knowledge that the fragile peace of the realm balanced precariously on the knife edge of betrayal. The very people sworn to protect the throne were now enmeshed in shadows of conspiracy. A low murmur floated through the corridors. Whispers of a secret meeting convened in the palace's western wing, where lesser-known nobles plotted in hidden chambers lit only by flickering oil lamps. The servant knew this was no ordinary gossip. The tone was charged with urgency and fear. They had to know more. Using every scrap of learned subtlety and discretion, the servant navigated the labyrinthine palace passages, slipping through shadows, avoiding the gaze of the watchful guards. It was a skill honed by months of silent observation, to be seen yet unnoticed, to hear without being heard. The servant's small frame and unassuming presence were their greatest allies in this deadly game of secrets. At the edge of the western wing, behind a tapestry depicting the goddess Isis, a faint glow escaped through the cracks of an aged wooden door. The voices, muffled but urgent, confirmed the servant's suspicions. They pressed an ear against the cool wood, heart pounding as the whispered words spilled forth. Tonight the plan moves forward. The pharaoh must be removed before the harvest festival. The council grows impatient, and the people begin to whisper of unrest. If we do not act soon, we risk losing all, one voice declared, sharp and resolute. Another replied, the guards loyal to the throne have grown suspicious. We must silence them or bring them to our side. The priesthood is fractured, some support the pharaoh, others the new order. The servant's mind raced. Each word, each phrase was a thread in the tapestry of betrayal that threatened to unravel the kingdom's foundation. They knew this information had to be relayed to Neshet and Neferu immediately. With measured steps, the servant retreated into the shadowed halls, their thoughts consumed by strategy and survival. They felt the weight of countless eyes, friend and foe alike, as if the palace walls themselves bore witness to every heartbeat. Back in Neshet's chamber, the elder servant's face was grave as the servant recounted the night's discoveries. Neferu's brows knitted together in concern, her fingers tracing the intricate amulets she wore. We are near the precipice, Neshet murmured. The palace has become a den of vipers. Trust is a luxury none can afford. Neferu nodded. Our next step must be precise. We must root out these conspirators before they strike, but doing so openly would bring chaos. The Pharaoh must be protected quietly, lest panic unravel the kingdom. Together, they devised a plan to gather more concrete proof and to identify those within the guard and priesthood who remained loyal to the crown. The servant, now more than just a servant, became a shadow agent, a silent protector moving unseen through the palace's darkest corners. Days blurred into nights as the servant followed the threads of deceit. They learned of secret exchanges in the marketplace, coded messages hidden in offerings at the temple, and clandestine meetings held beneath the light of the crescent moon. Every discovery deepened the danger, yet also sharpened their resolve. One evening, as the servant approached the southern gardens, they noticed a figure cloaked in fine robes slipping through the shadows. Recognizing the insignia of a high-ranking noble known for their loyalty to the coup, the servant stealthily followed. The noble met with a figure wearing the garb of a temple priest, an alliance of treachery that cut deeper than imagined. Eavesdropping, the servant heard whispered plans of sabotage, poison to be slipped into the Pharaoh's wine, false accusations to be spread among the council, and threats made against those who dared oppose the uprising. The servant's heart thundered with urgency. This was no longer a simple plot. It was a full-scale conspiracy that could engulf the entire kingdom in flames. Returning to Neshet and Neferu, the servant delivered the dire news. The elder servant's eyes glimmered with both fear and determination. "We must act swiftly," Neshet declared. "But we cannot expose ourselves too soon. The balance is delicate. We need allies, trusted ones." Neferu reached out, placing a reassuring hand on the servant's shoulder. "You have done well. But the greatest test lies ahead." With renewed purpose, the servant began to forge alliances within the palace. Subtle gestures, quiet conversations, and the careful sharing of truths with those whose loyalty was unquestioned. They became a beacon in the shadows, a guardian of a throne besieged by betrayal. As the harvest festival approached, the palace simmered with tension. The servant knew the time for secrecy was nearing its end. The survival of the pharaoh, and perhaps Egypt itself, depended on courage, cunning, and the unyielding will to protect a legacy older than the desert sands. The days leading up to the harvest festival felt heavy with anticipation and unspoken dread. Within the sprawling palace, each corridor and chamber seemed to hum with an undercurrent of tension, as if the stones themselves braced for an impending storm. The servant moved through these halls with measured steps, the weight of their secret knowledge pressing upon their every breath. Their role had changed drastically since the early days of their service. No longer a mere observer, they had become a crucial player in the fragile game unfolding behind closed doors. Every smile, every whispered conversation, and every fleeting glance held potential meaning, some innocent, others lethal. Neshet had arranged a covert meeting with a small circle of trusted allies, loyal palace guards, a few devoted priests, and an advisor who had remained discreetly loyal to the pharaoh despite mounting pressure. The servant was introduced to this circle under the cover of night, the gathering taking place in a hidden chamber beneath the temple of Ammonius. The room was dimly lit by flickering oil lamps, casting long shadows that danced upon the walls etched with ancient hieroglyphs. The air was thick with resolve and anxiety as the group discussed their plans. "We stand at a crossroads," Neshet began gravely. "The conspirators grow bolder by the day. If we do not act, the throne will fall, and with it, the stability of all Egypt." One of the guards, a stern man named Kamos, spoke with a voice as steady as the desert wind. "We must increase our vigilance. Patrols will be doubled, and secret signals established to alert us of any suspicious activity." Neferu, ever composed, offered insight from the priesthood. "The temple rituals can provide cover for our movements. We must use the sacred festivals as opportunities to gather intelligence and protect the pharaoh discreetly. The servant listened intently, absorbing every word. Their heart beat with a mixture of fear and determination. They knew the coming days would test their loyalty, courage, and cunning in ways they had never imagined. Returning to their duties, the servant carefully observed the daily routines, seeking signs of betrayal. They noticed subtle changes, an unfamiliar tension in the eyes of some guards, hushed meetings behind closed doors, and coded messages concealed within offerings at the temple altars. One afternoon, as the servant carried fresh linens to the pharaoh's chamber, a slip of parchment fell from beneath a heavy tapestry. The servant's pulse quickened as they retrieved the note, careful to conceal it before anyone noticed. Unfolding it in a secluded corner, they read hastily scribbled words. Midnight. The Western Tower. The throne's fate will be sealed. The message was unmistakable, a plan to strike under the cover of darkness. With no time to lose, the servant sought out Neshit and Neferu. The elder servant's face darkened as the note was revealed. This confirms our fears, Neshit said. Tonight the palace will be tested. Neferu nodded solemnly. We must prepare the pharaoh and secure loyal guards. The Western Tower is vulnerable. As night fell, the servant helped reinforce the palace's defenses. They moved through shadowed halls, silently coordinating with trusted allies and placing themselves at critical vantage points. The moon hung low and full in the sky as the hours crept by. Silence settled over the palace, broken only by the distant sound of the Nile's gentle flow. Suddenly, a faint noise, a whispered command, the clink of metal, echoed through the western wing. The servant's breath caught as figures cloaked in darkness crept toward the tower. The planned coup was underway. Summoning every ounce of courage, the servant alerted the loyal guards. A tense confrontation ensued, the clash of steel ringing sharply through the night. Amidst the chaos, the servant caught sight of the lead conspirator, a noble whose ambition had driven him to betray his king. Their eyes met for a fleeting moment, a silent challenge passing between them. The battle was swift but fierce. The loyal guards, bolstered by the servant's timely warning, subdued the traitors before irreparable damage could be done. As dawn broke, the palace breathed a collective sigh of relief. The threat had been averted, but the servant knew this victory was only temporary. The web of conspiracy was vast, and the shadows still lingered. In the quiet aftermath, the pharaoh summoned the servant to his chamber. Cloaked in regal dignity, he regarded the young servant with a mix of gratitude and solemnity. You have served Egypt well, the pharaoh said quietly. Your loyalty and bravery have not gone unnoticed. The kingdom owes you a debt that cannot be repaid. The servant bowed deeply, humbled by the honor. Yet beneath the words lay a warning. The struggle for the throne was far from over. As the palace stirred with the first light of day, the servant prepared for the battles yet to come, ready to face the gathering storm with unwavering resolve. The first light of dawn filtered softly through the palace windows, casting a warm glow over the carved pillars and intricate frescoes that adorned the halls. Though the night's turmoil had been quelled, the servant knew that the peace was fragile, a delicate veil stretched thin over a world ready to tear apart at the slightest strain. The pharaoh's quiet acknowledgment still echoed in their mind, a rare moment of recognition for one so lowly born. Yet with this honor came an even greater responsibility, to protect not only the throne but the very soul of Egypt itself. In the days that followed, the servants' movements became more deliberate, their eyes sharper, and their senses more attuned to the faintest sign of danger. The palace, once a place of routine and order, had transformed into a labyrinth of hidden meanings and concealed threats. Neshit and Neferu continued to be steadfast allies, guiding the servant through the complex web of politics and power. Together, they began to investigate the roots of the conspiracy, a tangled web woven far beyond the palace walls. One afternoon, while dusting the vast library's ancient scrolls, the servant stumbled upon a curious document, a fragmented map marked with symbols unfamiliar to their limited knowledge. Intrigued, they sought Neshit's counsel, who recognized the markings as belonging to an old rebel faction rumored to have been wiped out decades ago. This map, Neshit explained, could lead us to the hidden caches of weapons and messages, remnants of the rebellion that once sought to overthrow the Pharaohs' ancestors. Realizing the gravity of this discovery, the servant and their mentors decided to explore the map's clues, hoping to find evidence that would expose the conspirators' supply lines and perhaps the identities of their most dangerous supporters. Under the cover of night, the servant slipped out of the palace and ventured beyond the fortified walls into the arid desert. The air was dry and biting, the sand shifting beneath their feet like the secrets they sought to uncover. Guided only by the stars and the faded map, they journeyed toward a series of ancient ruins known to few. Damage could be done. As dawn broke, the palace breathed a collective sigh of relief. The threat had been averted, but the servant knew this victory was only temporary. The web of conspiracy was vast, and the shadows still lingered. In the quiet aftermath, the Pharaoh summoned the servant to his chamber. Cloaked in regal dignity, he regarded the young servant with a mix of gratitude and solemnity. "You have served Egypt well," the Pharaoh said quietly. "Your loyalty and bravery have not gone unnoticed. The kingdom owes you a debt that cannot be repaid." The servant bowed deeply, humbled by the honor. Yet beneath the words lay a warning: the struggle for the throne was far from over. As the palace stirred with the first light of day, the servant prepared for the battles yet to come, ready to face the gathering storm with unwavering resolve. Hours passed as they traversed the desolate landscape, every shadow seeming to conceal potential threats. The ruins, half buried by time and sandstorms, rose like forgotten giants against the horizon, silent witnesses to the rise and fall of empires. Inside the crumbling stone chambers, the servant discovered hidden alcoves filled with relics, broken weapons, ancient texts, and messages carefully preserved in clay tablets. Among them lay a sealed scroll, the wax imprint bearing the emblem of the rebel faction. With trembling hands, the servant broke the seal and unfurled the scroll. It contained a detailed account of a long-forgotten uprising, its leaders, strategies, and ultimate downfall. But most chilling was a list of names, some of which matched those the servant had overheard whispered in the palace corridors. The conspiracy was not new. It was a resurgence of old wounds, fueled by old grudges. The servant realized that the threats to the Pharaoh's reign were deeply rooted in the land's turbulent history. Returning to the palace with the scroll carefully concealed, the servant met with Neshit and Neferu. The elders pored over the document, their faces etched with concern. "We are facing an enemy who has studied our history and learned from it," Neshit said. "To defeat them, we must be equally cunning." Neferu suggested seeking allies beyond the palace, among the desert tribes who remembered the old ways and owed loyalty to the pharaoh. The servant was tasked with a new mission: to travel discreetly and gather intelligence, forging alliances that might tip the balance in their favor. Days turned into weeks as the servant journeyed through the harsh desert, meeting tribal leaders around campfires and sharing stories beneath the endless sky. Each alliance was hard-won, built on trust and the promise of a stable Egypt. Meanwhile, back in the palace, Neshit and Neferu worked to strengthen internal defenses and root out traitors. The servant's absence was felt keenly by the pharaoh, who sent messengers with words of encouragement and gratitude. This connection fueled the servant's resolve to succeed, knowing that the future of the kingdom depended on their success. One evening, as the servant sat beneath a canopy of stars, a messenger arrived with urgent news. A new threat loomed, A faction within the palace had uncovered the servant's mission and planned to strike before the alliances could be fully secured. The sands beneath their feet suddenly felt colder, the wind whispering warnings of betrayal and danger. The servant hastened back to the palace, aware that time was running out. The desert had offered knowledge and allies, but it had also sharpened the dangers closer to home. Returning through the gates under the cloak of darkness, the servants steeled themselves for the battles yet to come. The memory chest, a symbol of the past, present, and future, held secrets that could save or doom Egypt. And the servant was determined to keep its contents safe, no matter the cost. The servant's return to the palace was marked by a sudden shift in the air, an unspoken tension that settled like a heavy cloak over the grand halls. The familiar corridors felt colder, and the eyes of even the most trusted servants seemed to carry shadows of suspicion. The fragile alliances forged in the desert were now a beacon of hope, but also a dangerous secret that could topple the delicate balance within the palace walls. Neshet awaited the servant in a secluded chamber deep within the palace, her eyes reflecting both relief and worry. "You have done well," she said quietly, "but the enemy moves faster than we anticipated. We must act before their plans come to fruition." Neferu arrived soon after, her presence calm but resolute. "The whispers have grown louder. There are those who watch us, waiting for a misstep. We must be vigilant." The servant shared every detail of their journey, the tribes who pledged loyalty, the messages uncovered in the ruins, and the imminent threat lurking within the palace itself. Together, the three devised a strategy to root out the traitors before they could strike. Meanwhile, the pharaoh continued his duties with an unshakable dignity, unaware of the full extent of the perils surrounding him. Yet the servant could sense his growing unease, subtle gestures, a furrowed brow, and the quiet moments of reflection in the privacy of his chambers. To shield the pharaoh, the servant took on the role of a silent guardian, shadowing his movements and intercepting potential dangers. Every interaction became a delicate dance, a whispered warning here, a discreet diversion there. In the days that followed, the servant discovered more signs of betrayal, secret meetings in hidden alcoves, coded messages passed under the guise of routine palace business, and a network of spies embedded among the palace staff. One evening, while delivering a message to the priesthood, the servant overheard a conversation that chilled them to the core. "The time is near," a voice hissed. "The pharaoh's fate will be sealed during the feast of the sacred bull. We must act swiftly." The feast was only days away, a grand celebration held in honor of the god Apis, marked by ritual and pageantry. It was also the perfect opportunity for the conspirators to strike amidst the chaos. The servant relayed this information immediately to Neshet and Neferu, who began preparations to protect the pharaoh and uncover the traitors during the feast. As the day of the feast arrived, the palace was alive with color and sound. Musicians played haunting melodies, dancers twirled in flowing robes, and the scent of incense filled the air. Yet beneath the celebration lay a current of fear and anticipation. The servant moved through the crowd like a shadow, eyes scanning every face for signs of deceit. Trusted allies were positioned strategically, ready to respond at a moment's notice. During the height of the feast, as the sacred bull was led through the palace courtyard amid chants and offerings, the servant spotted a group of nobles whose expressions were too guarded, too calculating. They followed discreetly, discovering a hidden passage where a clandestine meeting was underway. The conspirators spoke of their plan to poison the pharaoh's drink during the final toast. The servant's heart pounded. They had to act swiftly. Using a carefully arranged signal, the servant alerted the loyal guards. As the conspirators prepared to execute their deadly plan, the guards stormed the hidden passage, apprehending the traitors before they could harm the pharaoh. The feast continued, its joyous veneer intact, but the servant knew the danger was far from over. The palace was a battlefield of shadows, where loyalty and betrayal intertwined like the ancient hieroglyphs adorning its walls. That night, as the palace finally fell silent, the servants sat alone beneath the vast Egyptian sky, the stars a reminder of the eternal struggle between light and darkness. Their journey was far from over, but with each victory, however small, the memory chest grew heavier with the weight of secrets and hope. In the quiet aftermath of the feast's near catastrophe, the palace settled into a deceptive calm. Yet the servant knew better. Beneath the gilded ceilings and polished floors, whispers still crept like creeping vines, threatening to choke the fragile order they fought so hard to preserve. The intercepted poison plot had been thwarted, but the question lingered: who else among the courtiers had not yet revealed their hand? Who lurked in the shadows, biding their time? The servant's role had shifted again, from watcher to hunter, tasked with unearthing secrets buried deep beneath the palace's grandeur. The memory chest they carried was no longer just a symbol. It had become a burden filled with names, clues, and fragments of a puzzle that seemed endless. One morning, while performing their duties near the Pharaoh's private study, the servant noticed a subtle alteration in the stonework. A loose brick, barely perceptible to the untrained eye. Curious, they pressed the brick, revealing a narrow passage hidden behind the wall. Heart pounding, the servant stepped inside the darkness, the air stale with forgotten history. The passage wound downward, leading to a hidden chamber where ancient scrolls and relics were stored, untouched for generations. Among the relics was a small box carved from ebony, adorned with gold inlays depicting the Eye of Horus. Opening it, the servant found a collection of letters, correspondence between a mysterious figure and high-ranking palace officials. The letters spoke of betrayal, secret pacts, and plans to destabilize the pharaoh's reign. One letter caught the servant's attention. It referenced a figure known only as the Serpent, a shadowy mastermind orchestrating the unrest from behind the scenes. Determined to uncover the identity of the serpent, the servant shared their discovery with Neshit and Neferu. The elders exchanged grave looks, realizing the conspiracy ran deeper and was more organized than anyone had imagined. This serpent, Neshit murmured, has slithered through the corridors of power for years. To confront it, we must understand its motivations and connections. Neferu suggested consulting the archives of the temple priests, ancient records that might hold clues to the identity and origins of the serpent. The servant was tasked with this research, spending long hours poring over dusty scrolls, piecing together fragments of history and rumor. Slowly, a picture emerged, a nobleman once favored by the pharaoh's predecessor, whose ambition had turned to bitterness after being cast out. This nobleman, known as Amenhotep, had vanished from the public eye but seemed to have retained a loyal network within the palace and beyond. His thirst for power had become the fuel for the ongoing rebellion. Armed with this knowledge, the servant and their allies planned to expose Amenhotep's network. But first they needed proof, solid evidence that could not be denied. To obtain this, the servant infiltrated a secret meeting held in the dead of night, where they overheard plans to smuggle weapons into the city and incite an uprising during the next lunar eclipse. The servant's presence was nearly discovered, but quick thinking and a timely distraction allowed them to escape unnoticed, clutching a small parchment detailing the conspirators' plans. Back in the safety of the palace, the servant shared the intelligence. Neshit and Neferu immediately mobilized loyal guards and temple priests to intercept the smuggling operation. On the night of the lunar eclipse, a tense standoff unfolded at the city gates. The conspirators, caught off guard by the loyalists' preparedness, were forced to retreat, their plot foiled once again. Despite the victory, the servant understood that this was only a temporary reprieve. Amenhotep's reach was vast, and his influence poisonous. The memory chest seemed to grow heavier with every secret uncovered, but the servants' resolve remained unbroken. They had sworn to protect the Pharaoh and Egypt from the shadows that threatened to engulf them. As the eclipse passed and the moon returned to its full glow, the servant looked to the horizon, knowing that the coming days would bring new challenges and new opportunities to protect the legacy they had sworn to defend. The days that followed the foiled uprising were heavy with unease. The palace, usually a place of order and ceremony, seemed transformed into a chessboard where every move was calculated, and every ally scrutinized. The servant, though still low in rank, had become a pivotal piece in this deadly game of power and deception. Though Amenhotep's name was whispered behind closed doors, no one dared confront the shadows he cast directly. The servant's investigations had uncovered his extensive network, but his true whereabouts remained elusive. Every clue seemed to dissolve like mist when pursued too closely. One morning, as the sun filtered through the stained glass windows of the palace's eastern wing, the servant was summoned unexpectedly to the Pharaoh's private chambers. Heart-pounding, they approached the throne room, uncertain what awaited. Inside, the Pharaoh sat, his regal presence undiminished, yet his eyes betrayed a depth of weariness and concern. "You have served me well," he said quietly, gesturing for the servant to approach. "There is a matter of utmost importance, one that requires your utmost discretion." The Pharaoh revealed a hidden compartment within his desk, containing an ancient artifact, a pendant carved with the symbol of Maat, the goddess of truth and justice. "This pendant," he explained, "has been passed down through generations, said to protect the bearer from deceit and reveal hidden truths." He entrusted the servant with the pendant, urging them to carry it as a symbol of their mission and as a beacon to guide them through the maze of lies and treachery. Emboldened by this gesture, the servant renewed their commitment. They began to use the pendant during their investigations, finding that it seemed to sharpen their intuition and reveal subtle clues that had previously gone unnoticed. One afternoon, while exploring the palace's underground chambers, the servant discovered a hidden crypt, a forgotten mausoleum belonging to the Pharaoh's ancestors. Inside, inscriptions detailed ancient oaths of loyalty sworn by past servants and nobles alike. Among the inscriptions was a prophecy warning of a serpent in the heart, a betrayal from within that could bring ruin unless confronted with courage and wisdom. The servant realized the prophecy was a direct reference to Amenhotep and his plot. But more than that, it hinted at a secret alliance that had been formed centuries ago, binding traitors and loyalists in a delicate balance. Determined to uncover the full truth, the servant sought out an elderly scribe who had served the royal family for decades. The scribe, a man named Khepri, was known for his vast knowledge of palace lore and history. Khepri spoke of a secret society within the palace, a brotherhood that once protected the royal family but had since fractured, some members turning against the throne. "This society," Khepri whispered, "was sworn to silence and service. To uncover their secrets is to risk everything." With Khepri's guidance, the servant began to trace the signs of this brotherhood, subtle marks carved into pillars, coded phrases in official documents, and hidden chambers used for clandestine meetings. As the servant delved deeper, they uncovered evidence that Amenhotep had infiltrated this society, using it to consolidate power and spread discord. One night, as the servant pieced together these revelations beneath the flickering light of an oil lamp, a shadow moved in the doorway. The servant's heart raced. Was it friend or foe? Emerging from the darkness was Neshet, her eyes steady and calm. "We must be cautious," she said. "The serpent's coils reach farther than you know." Together, they devised a plan to confront the Brotherhood and expose its members. It would require cunning, patience, and the courage to face betrayal from the closest of quarters. The servant realized that this mission was no longer just about protecting the Pharaoh. It was about saving Egypt itself from a corruption that had festered for generations. Clutching the pendant of Maat, they prepared to step into the shadows once more, ready to face the heart of the betrayal and fight for the truth. The night air was thick with silence, punctuated only by the faint whispers of the desert wind outside the palace walls. Within the labyrinthine corridors and hidden chambers, the servant prepared for a mission that would test their loyalty, wit, and courage as never before. The Brotherhood, once a noble society sworn to protect the Pharaoh, had decayed into a clandestine network of conspirators and spies. Their veiled presence within the palace threatened to unravel the very fabric of the kingdom. Neshet and the servant knew the risk. Any misstep could mean death, or worse, betrayal from those trusted most. Their plan was meticulous. Using the clues from Khepri's ancient scrolls and coded messages, they would infiltrate a secret meeting of the Brotherhood scheduled during the new moon, a time when shadows offered perfect cover. Days before the gathering, the servant practiced disguises and memorized the secret signs that identified Brotherhood members, subtle hand gestures, specific phrases whispered during formal occasions, and hidden symbols etched on personal belongings. The servant's heart pounded as the night of the meeting arrived. Cloaked in a dark robe and carrying the pendant of Maat close to their chest, they slipped through hidden passages to the designated location, a forgotten chamber beneath the temple of Ammonius. Inside, a dozen figures gathered around a circular stone table, their faces masked in shadow. The servant's breath caught as the voice of Amenhotep echoed, commanding and cold. "We move closer to the throne," he declared. "Our plans will come to fruition when the Nile floods next month. The Pharaoh's time is limited." The conspirators exchanged nods, unaware of the servant's presence among them. Overhearing their discussions revealed a chilling plot: to unleash chaos by sabotaging the flood preparations that Egypt's survival depended upon. Without the annual flood, famine and despair would spread, undermining the Pharaoh's authority and forcing the people to question his divine favor. The servant realized the gravity of the situation. The stakes were higher than ever. As the meeting progressed, a subtle noise betrayed the servant's presence. A small stone shifted beneath their foot. Heads turned. Eyes narrowed, and the servant prepared to flee. But Neshet's timely intervention, leading a contingent of loyal guards, turned the tide. The conspirators were seized before they could react. In the ensuing chaos, Amenhotep escaped, slipping through a secret exit. The servant vowed to pursue him relentlessly. The palace erupted in turmoil as the truth of the Brotherhood's betrayal spread. The Pharaoh, though shaken, commended the servant and their allies for unveiling the conspiracy. Yet the battle was far from over. The servant knew Amenhotep's reach was deep, and his plans would continue unless stopped completely. The pendant of Maat glinted faintly in the dawn light as the servant prepared for the pursuit, the weight of Egypt's fate resting heavily upon their shoulders. The first light of dawn seeped through the lattice windows of the palace, casting long, golden beams across the stone floors. Despite the early hour, the servant was already on the move, their minds sharp with determination. Amenhotep, the elusive serpent, had slipped through their fingers once again, but this time, there would be no escape. The Pharaoh's command was clear: capture Amenhotep at any cost. The servant knew the stakes. Failure would mean not only their own death but the collapse of everything they had fought to protect. With Neshet and Nefer's counsel, the servant began to gather intelligence, calling on contacts in the marketplace, the docks, and even among the desert tribes. Amenhotep's network was vast and intricate, weaving through every corner of the kingdom. The servant's search led them beyond the palace walls, through the bustling streets of Thebes, past vibrant bazaars filled with the scents of spices and the calls of merchants. Every conversation, every glance, was a potential clue. At the docks, the servant learned that Amenhotep had arranged for passage on a riverboat heading south toward Nubia, a land known for its dense forests and treacherous terrain. It was a risky escape, but it offered cover from the Pharaoh's guards. Without hesitation, the servant secured a place on a small vessel departing that evening. The river's gentle current masked the urgency of their pursuit. As the boat cut through the shimmering waters, the servant's thoughts turned to the pendant of Ma'at, now worn prominently around their neck. It served as a reminder of their purpose and the divine justice they sought to uphold. The journey south was fraught with danger. The servant navigated treacherous rapids and faced moments of uncertainty when rumors of bandits and rival factions threatened to derail their mission. One evening, as twilight painted the sky in hues of orange and purple, the servant spotted a figure on the opposite bank, cloaked, hooded, and unmistakably familiar. Amenhotep. The chase was on. Crossing the river under cover of darkness, the servant pursued Amenhotep through dense underbrush and thorny thickets. The humid air was thick with the scent of earth and foliage. Despite the difficulty of the terrain, the servant's resolve never wavered. Memories of the palace, the Pharaoh's trust, and the people depending on them fueled every step. After hours of pursuit, the servant cornered Amenhotep near an ancient temple ruin, partially swallowed by vines and thyme. Amenhotep turned, eyes blazing with fury and desperation. "You do not understand," he spat. "The Pharaoh is weak. His reign is doomed. I seek only to save Egypt from ruin." The servant met his gaze, unflinching. "Your ambition blinds you. Your treachery endangers us all." A tense silence hung between them before the servant drew a hidden dagger, a symbol not of violence but of justice. Realizing escape was impossible, Amenhotep dropped to his knees, defeated. The servant bound him and prepared to return to Thebes, knowing that justice would be served, not by vengeance, but by the law and the will of the Pharaoh. As the sun rose over the horizon, bathing the temple ruins in golden light, the servant felt a quiet satisfaction. The serpent was caught, but the memories carried in the chest reminded them that vigilance must never falter. Egypt's future depended on the courage of those willing to face the shadows and bring truth to light. The journey back to Thebes with Amenhotep in custody was marked by a heavy silence. The servant, though physically weary from the pursuit through the dense Nubian forests, was mentally burdened by the weight of the serpent's confession and the implications it held. As the riverboat glided down the Nile, the servant reflected on the complexity of loyalty within the palace walls. Amenhotep's betrayal was not merely an act of ambition. It was rooted in a tangled web of grievances, old alliances, and shattered trust. Upon arriving in Thebes, the servant was greeted with a mixture of relief and suspicion. The palace courtiers had heard rumors of Amenhotep's capture, but many questioned whether the serpent's network had truly been dismantled. The pharaoh summoned the servant to his chambers once more. His gaze was solemn but resolute. "Justice must be tempered with wisdom," he said. "We cannot allow vengeance to breed further division." The servant understood. Amenhotep's trial would not be a spectacle but a carefully guarded affair to preserve the fragile stability of the realm. In the days that followed, the servant was assigned to oversee the investigation into the serpent's network. Each name uncovered revealed a complex pattern of loyalties, some born from genuine belief in Amenhotep's vision, others coerced or deceived. Neferu advised caution. Not all who followed him were villains. Some were trapped by circumstance, others blinded by promises. Together, they sought to reconcile these fractured loyalties, seeking ways to reintegrate the repentant while isolating the true conspirators. Meanwhile, the servant's relationship with the pharaoh deepened. The trust placed in them grew heavier, but also more rewarding. The servant became more than a watcher or a messenger. They were a guardian of truth and balance in a kingdom at risk of fracturing from within. One evening, as the servant catalogued the growing list of names in the memory chest, a message arrived, an encrypted scroll from an unknown sender. Its contents warned of a deeper conspiracy, one that predated even Amenhotep's schemes. The scrolls spoke of foreign agents seeking to exploit Egypt's internal turmoil, to weaken the pharaoh's rule and pave the way for invasion. The servant shared the message with Neshet and Neferu. The elders exchanged grave looks. The stakes had escalated beyond palace intrigue. With the pendant of Maat shining softly at their neck, the servant prepared to face new dangers, determined to protect Egypt not just from shadows within, but from threats beyond its borders. The air was thick with tension as the servant, Neshet, and Nefer gathered in a quiet chamber deep within the palace. The cryptic scrolls warning about foreign agents had unsettled even the most seasoned advisors. The idea that Egypt's enemies might seize the current turmoil to invade was a dire prospect. The servant unfolded the delicate papyrus, reading aloud the message that spoke of shadowy figures moving in the desert, covert emissaries plotting in distant courts, and alliances forged in darkness. These agents were said to be coordinating attacks aimed at crippling the Nile's lifeblood, the dams, the granaries, and the vital trade routes. Neshet, her face stern, mused, "If these rumors hold true, we are not just fighting traitors within. Our very land is under siege." The servant nodded, feeling the weight of responsibility settle deeper. They began compiling a list of potential suspects: foreign diplomats, merchants with suspicious ties, and even palace staff with unclear origins. The pharaoh was briefed, and his resolve hardened. He entrusted the servant with an elite group of scouts and spies to track and dismantle this external threat before it could strike. Under the cover of night, the servant led their team through the bustling city, slipping into back alleys and shadowed courtyards to meet informants and intercept messages. Their investigation took them from the vibrant markets of Thebes to the quiet banks of the Nile, where whispers of foreign agents were growing louder. One evening, a trusted informant brought news of a secret meeting between emissaries of the Hittite Empire and local collaborators, a conspiracy to destabilize Egypt by targeting the upcoming flood season, crucial for the kingdom's survival. The servant and their team prepared to intercept the meeting. Under moonlight, they moved silently through the desert, arriving at an ancient ruin where the conspirators gathered. What followed was a tense confrontation. The servant revealed the pendant of Maat, invoking its symbolism of truth and justice, and demanded the conspirators surrender. Some resisted, but many were caught off guard by the servant's resolve and the loyalty of their guards. The meeting was broken, plans foiled, and critical intelligence seized. Returning to Thebes, the servant presented their findings to the pharaoh. The threat was real, but contained for now. Despite the victory, the servant knew the struggle to protect Egypt was far from over. Both within the palace and beyond the Nile, shadows lingered, waiting for the next opportunity to strike. The memory chest, filled with records of these battles and secrets, stood as a testament to the servant's unwavering commitment to truth and the preservation of their homeland. The weight of the crown pressed heavily upon the pharaoh's brow as the sun set behind the gilded pillars of the throne room. News of the thwarted foreign plots had spread through the palace like wildfire, yet the challenges only seemed to multiply. The servant watched quietly from the shadows, sensing the strain that the ruler bore. For the pharaoh, every decision rippled through the kingdom like the waves of the Nile, bringing prosperity or disaster in its wake. That evening, the pharaoh summoned the servant for a private audience. The chamber was dimly lit, shadows flickering across ancient hieroglyphs that told stories of gods and kings long past. "You have done well," the pharaoh began, his voice weary but resolute. "But the burden I carry is not yours alone. Egypt's fate rests on many shoulders, yours included." The servant bowed deeply, feeling both honored and humbled. "The gods demand balance," the pharaoh continued. "Yet balance is fragile. The unrest within, the threats beyond, they all challenge the harmony Maat represents. He spoke of visions, omens seen in dreams of flooding that did not come, and stars shifting in the night sky. The memory chest, he said quietly, holds not just secrets, but the future. Together, they examined ancient texts and records stored within the chest, seeking guidance from ancestors whose wisdom transcended time. The servant's mind raced, piecing together clues from past betrayals, foreign invasions, and sacred rituals. They realized that the coming days would require not just bravery, but diplomacy, strategy, and faith. Days turned into nights as plans were forged. Envoys were sent to neighboring kingdoms to secure alliances. Priests performed rituals to appease the gods. Soldiers prepared defenses along vulnerable borders. Throughout it all, the servant remained a steady presence at the pharaoh's side, advisor, protector, and confidant. Yet, despite the precautions, a new shadow emerged from within the palace walls. Whispers of dissent, secret meetings in hidden chambers, and a growing faction that sought to seize power by exploiting the kingdom's fears. The servant knew that the final test was approaching, one that would demand every ounce of their courage and wisdom to preserve Egypt's legacy. The pendant of Maat gleamed softly against their chest, a symbol of hope amid encroaching darkness. The battle for Egypt's soul was far from over. As the days passed, the servant sensed an undercurrent of unease weaving through the palace halls. The whispers grew louder, voices hushed but urgent, speaking of unrest and hidden dangers lurking just beyond sight. The servant's role had shifted from mere observer to active seeker of truth, delving into the shadows cast by those who sought power in the darkness. The servant met frequently with Neshet and Neferu, their trusted allies, as they pieced together the fragmented clues left behind by the dissidents. The palace, once a beacon of stability, had become a labyrinth of secrets and silent threats. One evening, the servant discovered a hidden passage behind a tapestry in the northern wing, revealing a clandestine meeting room where conspirators gathered. Within its walls, plans were whispered to undermine the pharaoh's rule, sow distrust among the priests, and ignite rebellion among the common people. The servant's heart pounded as they listened, realizing the depth of betrayal within their own home. The conspirators were led by a high-ranking court official, once a loyal servant, now seduced by ambition and resentment. Knowing direct confrontation could jeopardize innocent lives, the servant devised a plan to expose the conspirators through cunning rather than force. They arranged for coded messages to be intercepted, false documents to be planted, and loyal guards to monitor suspicious activities. Meanwhile, the pharaoh's concerns deepened as he sensed the growing divide within his court. His private conversations with the servant revealed a man torn between the love for his people and the heavy cost of leadership. In quiet moments, the servant found themselves reflecting on the meaning of loyalty and justice, the fragile balance of Maat that governed not just the kingdom but the hearts of its people. The memory chest, ever growing with tales of courage and deception, became a repository of lessons hard won. In the end, the servant knew that to protect Egypt, they must navigate the whispering shadows with wisdom, patience, and unwavering resolve. The grand hall was adorned with banners depicting the Eye of Horus and symbols of Maat, yet beneath the grandeur, a storm of tension brewed. The trial of the conspirators had been set, a pivotal moment that would decide the fate of not just the accused but the kingdom itself. The servants stood near the pharaoh's throne, their hearts steady but mind racing. This trial was more than a display of justice. It was a test of Egypt's resilience and the integrity of its laws. As the accused were brought forth, noblemen and courtiers alike, their faces showed a mixture of defiance, fear, and resignation. Among them, the high-ranking official who had orchestrated much of the unrest held his gaze with chilling calm. The pharaoh spoke first, his voice echoing through the hall. Egypt is a land of order and balance. To disrupt Maat is to invite chaos upon ourselves all. The servant presented the evidence, carefully collected and documented in the memory chest, intercepted messages, testimonies, and the subtle clues uncovered during covert investigations. Defenders argued, attempting to twist words and sow doubt. But the servant remained composed, responding with facts and invoking the laws that had sustained Egypt through millennia. The proceedings were grueling, stretching over days as each conspirator faced scrutiny. The servant observed the subtle shifts in alliances, the cracks forming in the web of deception. Outside the palace, common people gathered, hopeful for justice yet wary of the outcome. Rumors swirled, and the air was thick with anticipation. When the verdict was finally pronounced, guilty, the atmosphere was heavy but resolute. Punishments were severe but tempered with mercy, aiming to heal the wounds rather than deepen them. The servant, though exhausted, felt a profound sense of accomplishment. The trial had reaffirmed the power of truth and the strength of a united Egypt. Yet, as the sun set, a new message arrived, hinting at fresh challenges. The serpent's venom had not been fully eradicated. With resolve renewed, the servant prepared for the next chapter, knowing that vigilance was the kingdom's greatest shield. The palace seemed quieter after the trial, but beneath the surface, tensions simmered. The servant, still carrying the burden of uncovering truths, felt the restless energy of a kingdom healing yet vulnerable. One evening, as the servant walked through the temple gardens, a shadow moved between the columns of papyrus. A figure stepped forward, a woman cloaked in deep indigo robes, eyes shining with quiet strength. "I am Kemet," she said softly, "a keeper of secrets you do not yet know. I have come to aid you in the darkness that still threatens our land." Skeptical but curious, the servant listened as Kemet explained she was part of an ancient order sworn to protect Egypt's sacred knowledge. Her lineage traced back to the scribes of Thoth, guardians of wisdom and mystery. She revealed hidden threats beyond palace walls, smugglers trafficking stolen artifacts, whispers of forbidden magic stirring unrest, and agents of chaos seeking to disrupt the harmony of Ma'at. Together, they forged a pact. Kemet would share her knowledge of secret passages, coded messages, and forgotten lore. The servant would continue their role as protector of the pharaoh and the kingdom's balance. Their alliance was tested immediately. Reports arrived of a clandestine shipment on the Nile, carrying relics said to possess otherworldly power. The servant and Kemet prepared to intercept the cargo before it could be used to fuel rebellion. As night fell, their small band moved quietly along the riverbank. Under a starless sky, they confronted the smugglers in a tense standoff. The battle was fierce but swift, the relics secured, and the criminals handed over to the authorities. Back in the palace, the servant recorded the event in the memory chest, the ever-growing archive of trials, triumphs, and sacrifices. Through Kemet's guidance, the servant's understanding deepened, not only of the political intrigue but of the spiritual fabric that bound Egypt's people and gods. The path ahead remained perilous, but with allies like Kemet and the strength of Ma'at guiding them, the servant was more determined than ever to protect the legacy entrusted to their care. The relentless sun bore down on the golden dunes surrounding Thebes as the servant and Kemet ventured beyond the palace walls, following whispered rumors of a hidden tomb. Ancient secrets lay buried beneath the sand, and the servant felt a stirring within, a mix of curiosity and duty to protect Egypt's heritage. The journey was arduous. Scorching days and chilly nights tested their resolve, but the knowledge that the tomb might hold clues to the kingdom's recent troubles spurred them forward. Local nomads spoke of strange lights flickering at twilight and eerie sounds carried by the desert winds. After days of searching, they uncovered the entrance, an ornate stone doorway partially concealed by shifting sands. Symbols of Anubis and the Eye of Horus guarded the threshold, their carved eyes seeming to watch the intruders. Inside, The air was cool and heavy with the scent of ancient incense. The servant's torchlight revealed murals depicting forgotten tales, gods walking among mortals, pharaohs communing with spirits, and battles between light and shadow. Deeper within, they found scrolls sealed with the mark of Thoth. Kemet carefully unrolled the fragile parchment, revealing prophecies and warnings, messages that spoke of a coming darkness and the importance of balance. Among the texts was a cryptic map, hinting at hidden relics imbued with the power to restore Maat or plunge Egypt into chaos if misused. The servant recognized that this discovery could change the course of their mission. But danger lurked. As they explored, traps triggered by ancient mechanisms challenged their every step, pitfalls, darts, and puzzles designed to deter the unworthy. Working together, the servant and Kemet navigated the perils, their bond strengthening with each challenge overcome. At the heart of the tomb, they uncovered a sealed chamber holding a radiant artifact, a golden ink pulsing with mysterious energy. The servant knew this relic was a key piece in safeguarding Egypt's future. Returning to Thebes, they vowed to protect the Ankh from those who would exploit its power. The memory chest's contents grew richer, chronicling their quest beneath the sand, a testament to courage, wisdom, and the eternal struggle to uphold Maat. The days following their return from the desert tomb were filled with uneasy calm. Yet the servant could feel the tension mounting like an approaching storm. The golden Ankh, now safeguarded within the palace's most secure chamber, was a symbol of hope and power, but also a beacon for those who desired chaos. Reports came in from the borders. Skirmishes between Egyptian guards and raiders increased, trade caravans were ambushed, and villages whispered of strange omens. The servant and Kemet worked tirelessly to unravel the threads of these attacks, suspecting a larger force was stirring beyond the kingdom's reach. Within the palace, the atmosphere was tense. The pharaoh convened his council more frequently, seeking to balance military readiness with diplomatic overtures. Yet many courtiers grew restless, their loyalties wavering in the face of uncertainty. One evening, the servant overheard a secret meeting between two nobles plotting to use the chaos to their advantage. Their ambition threatened to fracture Egypt from within. Determined to prevent further division, the servant gathered evidence and prepared to confront the conspirators. They also urged the pharaoh to strengthen alliances with neighboring kingdoms, emphasizing the need for unity in the face of external threats. As the storm clouds gathered, the servant's resolve hardened. The coming days would test Egypt's resilience and the strength of Maat. In the quiet moments before dawn, the servant prayed to the gods, seeking guidance and strength. The memory chest awaited their next entry, a record of battles fought, alliances forged, and the unyielding spirit of a kingdom determined to survive. The horizon darkened with the silhouettes of enemy forces amassing beyond Egypt's borders. The servant stood atop the palace walls, watching as the first signs of the siege took shape. The invaders were cunning, striking swiftly to disrupt the fragile peace. The city prepared for the onslaught. Archers took their positions, warriors sharpened their blades, and citizens sought refuge in the temple courtyards. The pharaoh's voice rang through the city, rallying his people with promises of protection and resilience. Amidst the chaos, the servant moved tirelessly, coordinating defenses and delivering vital messages between commanders. The golden ink remained secure, a symbol of hope amid the growing darkness. Battles raged through the streets, shadows clashing with light as the fate of Egypt hung in the balance. The servant's heart pounded as they fought beside loyal guards, their every move driven by a fierce determination to preserve their homeland. The tide of the siege ebbed and flowed. Moments of despair were met with bursts of courage. The servant's bond with Kemet proved invaluable, her knowledge of ancient strategies and secret passages turning the tide at critical junctures. After days of relentless struggle, the invaders began to falter, their lines breaking under the united force of Egypt's defenders. The Pharaoh's leadership shone, inspiring hope and unwavering loyalty. When the dust settled, the city bore the scars of battle but stood unbroken. The servant knew the memory chest would hold this chapter forever, a testament to courage, sacrifice, and the unyielding spirit of a people united. As the sun rose over the battered city, the servant vowed to continue guarding Egypt's legacy, ready for whatever trials lay ahead. The palace was quiet, bathed in the golden glow of dawn. The siege had ended, but its echoes lingered in the hearts of Egypt's people. The servant stood on the balcony overlooking the Nile, reflecting on the journey that had brought them from humble servant to guardian of a kingdom's destiny. The Pharaoh, seated beside them, spoke softly. "You have shown loyalty beyond measure. Egypt owes you a debt that cannot be repaid." The servants smiled, humility filling their chest. "It was Ma'at that guided us, balance, truth, and justice." Together, they opened the memory chest one final time, adding the last pages chronicling battles, alliances, sacrifices, and triumphs. Each story a thread in the tapestry of Egypt's legacy. The golden ink rested in the center, its light a beacon of hope for generations to come. As the river flowed endlessly towards the sea, so too would Egypt's story continue, shaped by the courage of those who dared to defend it. The servant knew their role was not just to serve, but to remember, to ensure the memory chest preserved the past for the future. With the sun rising higher, the servant looked forward, ready to face whatever new challenges might arise, secure in the knowledge that the spirit of Egypt was eternal. From the first step into the palace to the final moment of passing down memories, the journey of the young servant was more than just a life of obedience. It was a path of silent growth, of witnessing greatness and danger from the shadows. Though history may not remember his name, it was people like him who kept the heart of an empire beating. Through his eyes, we relive an Egypt of gods, gold, and secrets, a world where every corridor and ritual held stories left untold. Thank you for joining the memory chest on this timeless journey through the sands of ancient Egypt. If you found this story meaningful, please like, subscribe, and share to support future explorations into the forgotten past. See you again in the next memory.